true. You don't have to be in God to be halachically Jewish, but he's basically saying that you could be a Jew in good standing in God's eyes by not even believing in God. That is for sure a left-wing position. A position taken by left-wingers because they don't want to be judged. They're like, just leave me alone. Don't call me late for dinner, right? Invite me to every party, but don't judge me against the Bible. Fine. If they judge me against the Bible, I'd fall short. The difference is I don't deny that laws exist, while people on the left will rewrite laws to suit their lifestyle. I always say it's better to break laws, publicly break laws, than to deny laws exist. If for some reason, I mean, I don't break Shabbos, but if I was Machal Shabbos, if I broke Shabbos and I ate shrimp and I ate all this stuff, but I acknowledged that I was doing something wrong and I know that the Torah tells me not to do it, there's hope for me. On the other hand, if I broke Shabbos, if I ate shrimp and I did, things that the Torah was against, and then I would say the Torah wasn't even against it to begin with, it didn't really mean that. There's a lot of people who try to justify it. Although that's just rabbinic or this is that, then there's no hope for me because I no longer answer to anybody but myself. And this goes for Christians, Muslims, and Jews. There's hope for people who publicly say, I know I'm weak and I will have to deal with God about that in the afterlife, okay? Then saying, no, like the Torah's not against it. The Torah's not against it. And it gets you to violate the most fundamental commandment in the Torah, according to God himself. And that's lo tisal, like I'm not carrying God's name incorrectly. That means doing evil or misrepresenting God to the world. Because at that point, you're already poisoning the well for everybody else. They're like, oh, really? The Torah's not against that? When it clearly is. Like I was having a discussion, for some reason, I don't know, people have become very, very anti-me in these Israel-Palestine discussions because of this guy named Rabbi Littman. So then I hopped on and I gave my little speech basically saying that we have to make a distinction between religious Jews and secular Jews. And that although I support the state of Israel, we have to acknowledge that the existence of the state of Israel is antithetical to the Torah. It's just, it as a resurrection of biblical Israel, it can't stand. At the same time, we still have to support it against Palestine. Why? Because we have a moral compass that's intact. We could see who's the aggressor and we could see who has better values. But that doesn't mean that at the same time we have to rewrite the Torah to say that the Torah endorses modern day Zionism. So of course this guy started yelling. He's like, you're making a distinction between David Ben-Gurion and Rabbi Akiva. Of course that's what I'm making, but he's like saying the words one of our biggest religious sages, right, in the same breath as he's saying David Ben-Gurion, who was an atheist. Now, you can be an atheist and still be a decent individual. But the idea that you're going to say that belief and practice no longer matters in the life of a Jew, you might as well throw the Torah away. The same Torah that you claim gives you a right to the state or the land of Israel is the same Torah who says that if you break commandments publicly, you will be cut off from your people. They ignore that. And of course, all the pro-Pali guys, I think they get stuck on first stage thinking, or the pro-Israel guys. They get stuck on first stage thinking. So for them, if they're supporting Israel, they in some way have to justify it with the Torah. No, it's there. It supports this and that when it's not even there, right? It's just not there. But I think people who are honest would say, even though I know that this country falls short, right? It's still a lot better than what we see happening in Gaza, like under the H group. Obviously, but it's interesting. I mean, it almost proves Jesus right when Jesus says that someone can't have two masters, that they either love one and hate the other, right?
Yeah, I can see that.
Sure.
Yeah. Like in the sense that you could appreciate the state of Israel and support the state of Israel and acknowledge that it doesn't line up with the standards of biblical Israel.
But I mean, at some level, aren't you saying, in effect, that the state of Israel as exists today is just a country like any other, with the exception that I'm going to call it, is a safe space, relatively speaking, for Jewish people who are suffering around the world?
Well, if I can,
I mean, not now. Possibly in the late 40s.
if I can jump in on that statement, so Rabbi Asher, if I can get like your opinion on two things. Like the first one is with like being 66% of the Jewish people there being secular, is the government
More than
Lo-
66%.
More
More.
than 66%? Okay, yeah. Is the
It's like
government like
85.
working on that? Is the government like working on that? Have they
The
made any
government
state?
is secular.
Oh, that's fair. Okay, yeah.
The
I
majority
like
of the
forgot.
people
My
in the
bad.
Knesset, the majority of the members of Knesset are secular. When I say secular, I don't mean atheist, by the way.
Yeah.
Okay. I,
It's like secular like in the US, right? You know,
yeah,
you have
yeah, but it's
Christians,
more like
Muslims, Jews.
85 to like 90% are secular.
Okay, yeah. And
When you say secular, I guess let me get a slight clarification. Obviously, you mean obviously it is predominantly Jewish by at least halakhic point of view,
Yeah.
but you're saying non-observant.
Yeah, well, halakhic point of view just means that you're genetically Jewish by your mother's side, which doesn't mean
okay.
anything religiously. I would say someone like Netanyahu is what but I'm talking about the most. Most Israelis are not atheists. Most Israelis are traditional. In other words, they'll keep the Sabbath in their own way. They'll go to their parents' house for dinner. They'll drive there, fine, this and that. But they won't say that my values come from the Bible. They're culturally Jewish. While there are some atheists, like Tami Lapid, like the whole, like political parties like Shinui, they're staunch atheists. But that's not the majority of Israelis. Even Americans per capita are more religious than the average Israeli.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I guess second question is that there's been this big stir about, and you probably already answered this a while ago, about people make this big claim about like Ashkenazi Jews, but I'm like, isn't what makes you a Jew, you have to follow the law, so it doesn't matter like if you're Sephardic, it doesn't matter if you're Ashkenazi, like if you're just not following the law.
Yes, this is one big thing that these guys get stuck in the Israel-Pali debates. The idea of being indigenous to that piece of land is a left-wing secular argument. It's not a religious one. Because according to the Jewish religion, you can be a direct descendant of Moses and not have a right to live in that land. Because it says the land will vomit you out. It says you're entering a land that devours its inhabitants. And it says if you do such and such, you'll probably be unalived in the land or you'll be cut off from your people. So
Yeah.
this idea that it belongs to me because, like my ancestors could trace themselves to that plot of land is a secular argument. It's not a religious one. First, they say that it's the argument of them being indigenous, but then they make it religious by saying that Abraham bought this piece of land and my ancestors who existed as a religious entity on this land claimed it for themselves as a religious entity, right? I mean, not a secular entity, but now they're secular saying that they have a right to it. It may fall on the correct ears if it's an irreligious discussion, right? But at the end of the day,